If you have topics you would like to have us discuss on the Aging Well podcast, please click on the links in the episode description to send us a text or record your message or comments. We'd love to hear from you and how we can help you age well. If you benefit from the Aging Well podcast and would like to support the content financially, please click on the Support the Show link or support our affiliates and advertisers. Welcome to the Aging Well podcast. I'm Jeff Armstrong here with Corbin Bruton. In this and the episodes that follow, we will share candid discussions on aging and hear from the experts. We are here to inform and encourage as we experience, aging. In addition to its history of use in spiritual practices, fasting has been associated with various health benefits, including weight loss, improved insulin sensitivity, enhanced autophagy, reduced inflammation, improved heart health, mental clarity and focus, and cellular repair and longevity. But is it all it's promoted to be? In this episode, we take on the topic of fasting and how it relates to, aging.
Fasting's been around for centuries, primarily for religious purpose, but it's kind of transitioned into the new hot trend-setting diet of fasting. Let's dive into this topic today about fasting. Now, Dr. Armstrong, what's your opinion on fasting?
I mean, again, it depends on what you're talking about with fasting. I mean, there's certainly fasting for the spiritual benefits, and I think there's certainly benefit there. And then there's fasting for longevity, and that is a bit more controversial, and I can really dive into that a lot deeper. When you're looking at fasting for the point of improving body composition, I think it's kind of a dumb idea.
Okay, so I think that's pretty interesting. So you think it's a dumb idea. There is a lot of literature out there that talks about the benefits of it. You know, an article from Healthline says that it promotes blood sugar control, reducing insulin levels. It promotes better health, fighting for inflammation. It may enhance heart health by improving blood pressure, triglyceride, and cholesterol levels. May boost brain function, preventing neurodegenerative disorder. It aids in weight loss by limiting calorie intake and boosting metabolism. It increases growth hormone secretion, which is vital for growth, metabolic weight loss, and muscle strength. It could extend longevity. And it may aid in cancer prevention, increasing the effectiveness of chemotherapy. Now, just by looking at that to me seems that someone who is wanting to age well, they should dabble in fasting a bit.
Okay, and that's not a scientific journal, so you'd have to dive in a lot deeper to each of those different comments. So let's take all those one at a time then.
Let's go back to number 1, which is fasting promotes blood sugar control by reducing insulin restraint.
Okay, and there's a lot of ways that it actually does that, and it does, benefit in insulin sensitivity and some of those. But it can also be get the same benefit from exercise. So where does fasting come into play there in terms of really having an overall benefit in terms of insulin sensitivity? Because if I can exercise and burn calories and get the same benefits, I'm going to get the added benefit of adding cardiovascular health, adding muscle strength, muscle endurance, adding hypertrophy that's going to allow me to be more functional. So why not exercise rather than fast?
All right. Yeah, no, I don't have it. That makes sense. Number 2, it promotes better health by fighting inflammation.
Fights inflammation, but how much do you have to fast in order to do that? What's the background in terms of the level of fasting that is being done there?
Just diving into this, it says research shows that inflammation may involve in a development of chronic conditions such as heart disease, cancer. Some studies have found that fasting decreases inflammation levels. One review found that 18, yeah, it doesn't actually say, other than the fact it says other small studies discovered that participating in intermittent fasting for 1 year was more effective in decreasing inflammation levels. So if you're going to be fasting, it seems like you're going to have to stay committed to that fast, especially, and is that maintainable?
Well, intermittent fasting is just not eating for a period of the day, and there's different protocols for doing that. And one person who was a really heavy promoter of that and has kind of shifted gears on that is Dr. Pediatria. And he's kind of that longevity doctor, kind of a bit of a celebrity status in there, written numerous books, and I think is a very, very good source on that. And he has kind of switched his gears in regards to the benefits of fasting, from a lot of different standpoints. And, if you are a person of healthy body composition and you are fasting regularly, you are very likely to be losing muscle mass in that process. And when we look at taking a period of fasting, say, typical 16 hours, that's generally not long enough to generate some of these major benefits that are really talked about in regards to improving one's health. And I think the biggest thing that we want to look at in what is being promoted as a benefit of fasting is autophagy. Autophagy is the cellular process of kind of recycling and removing damaged or dysfunctional components from the cell. And that is something that we see increasing as we age. And so a goal in aging well would be to try and decrease that level of damage to the cells. And so if autophagy is decreasing, then we're starting to see a buildup of damaged stuff in the cells. So that's where cancer can begin to be promoted more. And, we see more muscle breakdown and things like that. But with nutrient deprivation, we actually activate some of the signal processes that help to clear that up. And one of those is to inhibit mTOR. But we know mTOR is a signal for muscle hypertrophy. And so repeated regular fasting, yes, it may clear out some of that damaged cellular material, but it's also doing it at the expense of muscle protein synthesis.
Wow.
So I'm not.
Which is weird because one of the health benefits in here that it talks about is it increases growth hormone secretion, which is wouldn't. So I feel like that kind of contradicts itself just right there within some of the literature, doesn't it?
Yes and no. It depends how the growth hormone is being used. I mean, growth hormone, we generally think of growth hormone only as a muscle building hormone, but it's also a hormone that helps to essentially increase blood glucose levels. Okay. And so if your blood glucose levels are low, then it tends to help increase that by kind of helping to break down tissue and kind of blocking the use of glucose and more favoring the use of fat. And so, yeah, in some situations, it's going to be beneficial for individuals. But again, if you're of a healthy body composition, it's probably not going to be as beneficial to you. And you're more likely to see more detriment to it than you are seeing favorable results. And Dr. Adia basically has come to a point of recommending that fasting should be a tool only for the ideal candidate, that it should be someone who has either plenty of muscle to spare or someone who has over 35% body fat. And it's more important to be losing that body fat than to be worrying about losing some muscle mass.
Now, was he promoting intermittent fasting or was he promoting like all in all fasting?
He was just fasting in general. He would do regular monthly, sometimes multi-day fasts, and so really promoting the concept of more regular, longer term fasting in order to promote that autophagy and to stimulate longevity. And there have been studies that have shown that decreasing caloric intake has a benefit of longevity. But again, if you are decreasing your caloric intake when you don't need to, there's no health benefit to doing it. You're better off maybe even increasing caloric intake and increasing the level of activity that's going to stimulate muscle growth and hypertrophy.
Number 3, it may enhance heart health by improving blood pressure, triglyceride, and cholesterol levels.
Okay. And again, exercise does that far more effectively than reducing food intake. So yes, there's benefits to it, but you have to look at what are these benefits costing us? It's that opportunity cost piece. And I would argue that there is far better benefits in terms of improving your blood chemistry, improving your cardiovascular function, improving arterial health in exercising and eating better food than just simply not eating food.
Yeah, it really wouldn't make sense to necessarily fast in that aspect if you're just eating healthier food. Like
Right.
that is also going to lower cholesterol levels, right?
Part of the reason you're seeing damage to the vessels and things like that is because in the situations where they're looking at those people who have poor diets or over fat and not active, they have elevated glucose levels. They have insulin resistance. And so the elevated glucose in the blood is pro-inflammatory, and it's going to cause vessel damage. And that vessel damage leads to heart disease and all those types of things. And so just simply regulating your sugar intake and improving your insulin resistance, which you can do through exercise, which is the encouraged way to do it, you are going to have the same effect.
I'm just taking in what you just said, and it's almost as if they're kind of rolling in a healthier diet, which is obviously going to be lower calories, is going to have a similar benefit to fasting, which is you're also decreasing your caloric levels as well. So I feel like,
if you're talking weight loss,
yeah,
go back to one of my favorites, Dr. Mike Israetel and Renaissance periodization diet. They talk extensively about the primary way to improve your body composition. So about 50% of success in a weight management program is going to come simply by balancing your caloric intake with your caloric expenditure. And so if I'm in a hypocaloric state and I'm over fat, I am going to lose weight and I'm going to lose body fat, not necessarily muscle mass. If I fast and I'm not getting adequate protein into my diet, I'm going to lose both muscle mass and fat, which, yeah, great. You're smaller on the scale, but in that process, you are losing functionality over time because the more people cycle through these weight loss periods and then they gain weight back, and we're just talking weight, not body composition, over time, they lose muscle mass and never regain it. They lose fat mass, but they keep regaining it and losing it, regaining and losing it. And so it becomes this vicious cycle of losing muscle mass over the course of time. And so fasting, yeah, it's going to have its place in certain situations, but regular fasting is probably less favorable for maintaining healthy muscle mass.
What about number 4? It may boost brain function and prevent neurodegenerative disorder.
The key is may, so, okay, there's some evidence in the literature, and, we can say the same thing for a ketogenic diet.
Right.
But would I recommend a ketogenic diet to somebody who is not an epileptic? Probably not, unless they're in a situation where they are trying to just really, like a physique competitor that is in those final stages of trying to lose as much fat mass as possible while sparing muscle mass. Yeah, it's okay. But from a performance standpoint, our body functions best on carbohydrates. And so if we are looking at performance, which in order to exercise, you need to be able to perform, you're going to need some carbohydrates. And so what's the real benefit?
Well, I kind of see what they're saying as far as that one goes. Um, you know, fasting, helping to regulate your blood sugar levels. And then by doing so, you're kind of helping the body not develop type 3 diabetes, which is um, diabetes in the brain. So I kind of see it from that point. But again, the literature, it's really not strong enough on that aspect. And then if you look at other neurodegenerative diseases such as Parkinson's, there's not much evidence as far as fasting goes with that realm. In fact, fasting could actually do more damage based off of just the literature that's out there. If with an individual with Parkinson's, an individual with, you know, early stages of dementia or Alzheimer's, fasting, there's some literature that's saying that fasting can benefit with that. And then there's other fasting that says that it can kind of speed that process up. So
So if we know that the exercise is going to have a positive benefit in both of the situations, both in Parkinson's and exercise combined with a healthy diet in terms of at least delaying the onset of dementia is beneficial. So, but we're not sure of fasting. So why would you promote fasting when you're not sure? And it could cause some damage.
Correct. Now, the only thing I can think of is when I'm fasting and I'm at that good level of hunger, not where I'm super, super hungry, where I'm kind of confused, or I'm at the point where I'm starting to get angry because I'm so hungry and I'm a little, but in that good balance where you're hungry, but your senses are heightened. You're a little bit more alert. You're a little bit more aware. I can understand if they're going that route, but that's not necessarily the route that they're going.
And again, that is a periodic fasting. And from how you just stated that, you can see where it can have some spiritual benefit in terms of, whether you are connecting with your God, connecting, spiritually with the universe, or, just trying to develop humility or self-control, or trying to resolve maybe a major crisis in your life, trying to find a solution to a problem. That is a benefit in there, but it's because it's what it's doing to you psychologically and spiritually that is benefiting you. It's not that it is having a direct long-term benefit to your neural capacity or to your physical health.
What about number 5? Aids weight loss by limiting calorie intake and boosting metabolism.
Again, you have caloric balance being the primary factor that drives body composition management. I don't want to say weight management because, yes, you can lose weight, but if you're losing muscle mass, you're still losing weight. And so with fasting, yes, it promotes a caloric deficit, but at the same time, it is not giving us adequate proteins in order to be able to maintain muscle mass. And so invariably, you are going to lose some muscle mass in the process of fasting. And for those who are promote intermittent fasting and do resistance exercise and things like that, if they really examined it, they would probably find that they are losing some of the potential gains that they might have in the gym. Because first of all, when can you work out? For myself, if I work out at 5:00 in the morning and I'm not going to eat until 5:00 at night, and then with intermittent fasting, it'd actually even be later than that. So I'm not eating for at least another 12 hours after my workout. I have now depleted my muscle glycogen. I've passed that window of where, my insulin sensitivity is higher, that I'm going to draw in all that glucose into the skeletal muscle, which means I'm also going to draw in less protein into the muscle. I'm also missing all the kind of windows of the signaling that's telling the muscle to grow. And I eat later in the evening when I'm less active. Now I'm eating these massive amounts of calories trying to catch up, and probably more likely to even deposit a little bit more of that as fat.
Hmm.
So I'm not a big fan of intermittent fasting. Now it may work for some people, and if it works for you, that's fine. But I don't think, from a longevity standpoint, that there's enough evidence to say that that is the best approach. I would say, from the standpoint of what you're saying here in terms of losing weight, and by weight, we're going to talk about body composition. So ideally losing fat weight. No matter what you eat in a caloric deficit, you are going to lose weight. That was demonstrated with the Twinkie diet from, I can't remember the professor's name, and I believe it's the University of Kansas nutritional professor that ate more or less a Twinkie diet for about a month and lost weight and improved all his markers of blood chemistry because he had gone from a very unhealthy state to a caloric deficit state, that just by reducing his calories, he improved his health. So it's better if I'm going to be consuming more protein over the course of the entire day, rather than trying to get my, say, 200 grams of protein in a 5-hour window.
I discussed my epigenetics test with True Diagnostic co-founder Hannah Wendt in episode 162. Epigenetic testing measures baseline and changes in your pace of aging, giving you the power to steer your anti-aging or health and wellness journey in the right direction. I learned that I am aging well. Click on the affiliate link in the episode description, use the promo code AGEWELL, and receive a 12% discount on your epigenetics test and monitor your pace of aging.
I also think there's some contradicting with the second part of that statement. Yes, everything that you just said is the first part of the statement, which it aids weight loss by limiting calorie intake. But the second part, where it says and boosting metabolism, that's where I think the contradicting information is in a lot of the literature. Is, some of us have been taught that your body doesn't know when it's going to eat next. So if you eat small meals throughout the day, you're able to kind of take that in, the body adjusts, and then it says, oh, I don't need this as much, so I can burn it up. There's literature out there that says that's a good way to spike metabolism. But with the, I guess, new literature that's out there, it's saying, no, fasting is the way to boost the metabolism, because when we fast, that's what our body's designed to do. Our ancestors back in the day could go days without fasting because they had to go out and hunt the elk or whatever. And sometimes there were days where they didn't have food. Your body has the ability to use its stored energy sources to move forward. So you're resetting it back to its normal thing. I feel like that's kind of a...
And let's talk aging well.
How are you spiking your metabolism?
How long did your ancestors live in those circumstances?
All right,
if
fair
they didn't
argument.
get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger or something like that, what was the lifespan of those individuals that were going for such long periods of time without eating? And you can dive into some of the epigenetics that come from, what happens to somebody who, in their adolescence, as they are developing their, if it's a male developing, sperm are developing in their body. For females, the eggs that are developing, that has an implication long-term for future generations in regards to how they are going to utilize carbohydrates and, their risk of diabetes and those types of things. And so, anytime we look back at our ancestors, the first thing we got to understand is that our ancestors did not have the lifespans that we have now, for a lot of reasons. They just got killed by the environment, or by predators in the environment, but also they weren't getting the food intakes and the things that we get now to help us to live a little bit longer. And so I think that's a kind of a poor argument for why we don't need to eat as often. because our bodies are beautifully designed to be able to manage periods of, a lack of caloric intake, or, periods of famine and periods of feasting. But that doesn't mean that that is the ideal state for the body.
Correct.
And so, when people talk about how intermittent fasting can benefit body composition, some of those things, one of the things that they're promoting is that, a prolonged fast, a 16-hour daily fast, tends to favor more ketogenesis in the body, where you're going to have ketone bodies building up. And that those ketones have actually been shown to induce autophagy. So they're going to have an effect of breaking down not only fat, but also helping to kind of clear out some of that tissue. But part of why they're clearing out that tissue, which would also limit protein synthesis, is that because there's no food available, the body is taking any product that it can to be able to convert that into nutrients that can be used for energy. And so we're breaking down the body in that process. We're not building it up. And so a better approach to longevity, in my opinion, would be to do the things that are promoting healthy growth of tissue and maintenance of tissue. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. I just think it's interesting that what they're saying is fasting helps boost metabolism, but I feel like that is a contradicting.
Yeah, I want to
statement.
see the evidence.
All right, let's just move past that.
I think where they're talking about boosting metabolism, metabolism gets used in such poor ways.
Mm-hmm.
Metabolism is basically just all of the cellular reactions going on in the body. And oftentimes people talk metabolism in regards to, like fat use and, burning calories. And from that standpoint, if fasting is going to put you in a ketogenic state, then you are burning through excess calories because fat can't be utilized as effectively to produce the ATP that the muscle needs to be able to contract. And so if we're burning through that energy ineffectively and producing ketones, then you can argue that our metabolism, and I put air quotes in there that can't be seen to the listener, but that's not the kind of promoting metabolism that we are talking about. If we want to promote metabolism, increasing muscle mass and increasing the physical activity that is burning calories is going to be a more effective approach to elevating kind of our metabolism, our ability to expend the calories that we are taking in.
So let's dive into number 6, increases growth hormone secretion, which is a vital for growth metabolism, weight loss, and muscle strength.
Okay, and I think we've already talked about growth hormone, and growth hormone is, essentially we tend to think of growth hormone as something that just builds muscle. And so by saying we're going to increase growth hormone, we're going to increase muscle mass. That's not necessarily the case unless there's a stimulus for muscle growth. And again, if fasting is inhibiting mTOR, then it's going to have a negative effect in terms of promoting protein synthesis to build a muscle. And so in that process, the growth hormone now is acting to increase blood glucose levels. And it's increasing blood glucose levels because we are not getting enough calories into the body. We have to get that glucose somewhere else so that the cells can function. And if we're getting it somewhere else, we're getting it from tissues that might normally be storing it. We're not storing it in the muscle. We're not using that energy to promote muscle hypertrophy and tissue growth. And so, it promotes that, but it's doing it to better regulate our blood glucose levels. And so exercise can do much the same thing. With exercise, one of the benefits of exercise is that it is improving our insulin sensitivity, and it's also affecting growth factors like insulin like growth factor 1, which helps to increase that autophagy, but it can also help to promote more tissue growth.
Well, isn't testosterone also going to be a factor in muscle building as well? And if we're fasting, I feel like that's going to affect your endocrine system altogether and throw off those testosterone levels, because with testosterone, that's more of a fat-based hormone. So you have to be taking in something in order to help produce it. Am I wrong in thinking that way?
Yeah, I mean, testosterone and estrogen, I mean, any of your steroid type hormones in the body are based on cholesterol. So, yeah, there
Right.
needs to be an intake of a certain level of healthy fats in the body in order to produce those.
So it's almost like if you're fasting, you're lowering those levels as well.
Yes and no. I mean, it really, your body produces cholesterol. And so, if there are the available components to produce cholesterol, your body's going to produce it. And so I think that's a less of an issue. And I've not seen it at all tied to fasting or otherwise. So I don't think that's a big issue.
Food for thought, I guess.
Yeah.
Number 7, it could extend longevity.
Again, and does it say how it extends longevity?
So what it says several animal studies have found promising results on the potential lifespan extending effects of fasting. In one study, rats that fasted lived 28% longer and developed diseases later than rats that were given unlimited access to food. Other research has turned up similar finding, reporting that fasting could affect increasing longevity and delay in diseases. However, current research is mostly limited to animal studies. Further studies are needed to understand how fasting may impact longevity and aging in humans.
See, that's what I love about some of these articles, that they take a few studies and they make a claim, but then they hide in there that more studies are needed to really demonstrate what we're saying is to be fact.
I feel like that's what science is, though. There's always going to be more.
You don't make conclusions based on limited information, and you don't say, kind of state an absolute. And you look at that first study, they're comparing fasting to, in a sense, overeating, and that those are two extremes. And yeah, if you're overeating, if you're given unlimited eating, it's going to have less of a benefit toward your longevity than fasting will. But there's also studies in there that look at just, minor caloric reduction in animals having a benefit of longevity. And in the long run, it's probably better that minor caloric restriction, to limit our body fat, to have a modest modest amount of caloric intake in order to promote longevity, because that benefits that autophagy and the cellular cycling and mechanisms that are going to help maintain healthy tissue and give longevity, more so than eating as much as much as we want to eat. If that makes any sense.
Totally makes sense.
So
what doesn't make sense is number 8. It may aid in cancer prevention and increase the effectiveness of chemotherapy.
Well, and again, how it's benefiting goes back to the idea of autophagy. And if we are inhibiting mTOR, then that is going to limit cancer growth and things like that, because the tissue isn't able to grow. But the benefits are not quite as great. And generally, we have to look at the type of fasting, and you also have to kind of look at the situation that you're in. Perhaps somebody who is battling cancer, intermittent fasting is going to have a better benefit in terms of that outcome. But again, what is the outcome we're after there? We're after survival, right? And so the maintenance of muscle tissue is not the primary concern for somebody with cancer. The primary concern is survival, is defeating those cellular structures that are out of whack, that are mutating and growing and metastasizing in the body. And so intermittent fasting can be very beneficial in there. So I'm not saying that fasting itself is bad, but if we're talking about aging well, and if you're talking about somebody who is apparently healthy in their young years saying, I'm going to start intermittent fasting in order to prolong my life, they're probably taking the wrong approach.
Mm.
Again, there's situations where the intermittent fasting may have some benefits. And again, that's going to be if you are significantly overweight, if you are battling cancer or even diabetes, that may help to bring some of that normal physiological function back into sync in order to help combat those diseases. But from a longevity standpoint, if we look at the benefits of fasting for autophagy, generally in response to the nutrient deprivation, our cells are going to activate those pathways. mTOR, which we haven't mentioned, stands for mammalian target rapamycin, which is a lot easier to say mTOR. That tends to promote cell growth, mTOR promotes cell growth and protein synthesis. And so fasting is going to inhibit that. And so when mTOR is inhibited, it's going to lead to a decrease in protein synthesis and an increase in the breakdown of cells. And so we can look at it in these compartmentalized fashions and say, okay, well, autophagy is good for our longevity because it's going to minimize the risk of cancer. It's going to minimize the likelihood of the buildup of these damaged cells and tissues in the body that can lead to conditions like dementia or other pathologies that might come with aging. But the reality is that cleanup is important, right? But there are better benefits that can come from exercise, or similar benefits plus benefits that can come from exercise. And so when we look at what exercise does and how it can benefit autophagy is, first thing is energy is depleted. So you can deplete your energy by not eating and not getting any other activity benefits, or you can deplete your energy through exercise, which, as exercise increases, we're using more ATP, which tends to activate AMP, activated protein kinase, which is a sensor in the body that kind of plays a key role in promoting autophagy. It can, in a sense, inhibit mTOR like fasting, but it's only for a brief period of time. And we also have the mTOR promotion. So we have that balance between promoting protein synthesis and promoting the cellular breakdown. So clearing up all the damaged tissue.
Right.
We're also increasing circulation to the muscles, which allows a better promotion of that, getting the stuff to the muscle that's going to help to remove all the nasty products that are building up in our tissues. Exercise also generates reactive oxygen species, or ROS, as a byproduct. And that stress and the heat shock proteins and things like that are promoted during exercise, that all can help promote the autophagy in the cells. We talked about growth factor and insulin sensitivity. We know that exercise promotes that. But something else that was not mentioned as we talk about intermittent fasting is mitochondria. Autophagy helps play a role in kind of removing dysfunctional mitochondria and promoting more cellular health. Well, regular exercise promotes that. It promotes what's referred to as mitophagy, which, we have this constant cycling of the mitochondria. So damaged mitochondria are removed, new mitochondria are produced, and so we're constantly kind of decreasing the number of mitochondria in the cell. When we regulate mitochondria in the cell, we are going to have better oxidative capacity within the muscle and better overall functioning of the cell. And so exercise has this added role of really benefiting our mitochondria in a way that I don't think fasting has been shown to do.
Totally.
And so I think when it comes down to it, if you want to live well and age well, then involving yourself in some moderate to high intensity interval training, aerobic exercise, combined with more resistance training, will have much more positive benefits on autophagy and longevity than just simply fasting will.
So would you, and I think I know the answer, but would you recommend fasting at all to the aging well population?
Well, yeah, for the right purposes. I mean, I think there is a certain spiritual benefit to it, certain psychological benefit to it, from a more meditative, whether it, you're talking religion or just general spirituality or well-centeredness, any of that kind of stuff. There's certain benefits to it there. Periodic periods of 24-hour multiple day fasts can also have a benefit of kind of resetting some of the kind of cellular activity within the body. And so it is beneficial. I don't think it has near the benefit that is being promoted by those that are promoting more intermittent fasting. I also don't think that it is going to be as beneficial to our longevity. Again, if we're talking intermittent fasting, it's not going to be as beneficial as regular moderate exercise is going to be for improving our cellular function.
All right. I think that sounds, I couldn't agree more with you on that one.
So have I sold you on?
Yeah, you did, because I kind of came into this this podcast more for fasting. I saw a lot of like I said, there's a lot of information, there's a lot of literature out there, there's a lot of conflicting information, and I was leaning more towards that side of fasting. And so I think that this was a really good educational podcast for me being a part of it. I hope that our listeners got a good take-home message out of it, and just know that, hey, there may be some information that's out there, but do your own research, make your own decision on that. And no matter what decision that you make, I'm hoping that we inspire you all to age well.
Thank you for listening. I hope you benefited from today's podcast. And until next time, keep aging well.